If you are a woman over 60 and the weight around your middle has not moved in years, no matter what you eat, I am about to tell you about something my grandmother used to drop in a glass of water every night before bed. The next morning, she would drink it slow, sitting at her kitchen table before anything else touched her lips. The women in our village who did this every morning, my children, did not carry the hard belly weight that pulls a woman down after 60. Not one of them. I am going to show you exactly what she put in that water, why it works on the body of a woman over 60 in a way nothing else does, and how one woman I know used it to drop close to 30 pounds in 5 months at the age of 72 after 15 years of nothing working. And I am going to tell you about another woman, 78, who lost 22 pounds in 4 months after her doctor told her her body was just done changing. So stay with me, baby. The kettle is on. Come sit. My name is Mama Aisha Diallo, and for over 40 years, I have worked with herbs, roots, and the foods that come out of the earth here in Atlanta. But what I learned, I did not learn here. I learned it from my grandmother in the Fuda Jalan in the green hills of Guinea. She did not have a clinic. She had her hands, her plants, and her quiet eyes. Later, I sat with the bush doctors in the islands and the Gula women down in the Carolinas who never wrote a single thing down because they did not need to. My grandmother used to say something in our language. All sickness comes through the belly first. The belly is the room where the body decides what is friend and what is foe. After 60, that room goes dark. And the weight you cannot lose, my friend, is not your fault. It is what happens when nobody is left in the room to do the work. Let me tell you about Beatrice from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 72 years old, retired nurse. She came to my kitchen last spring and she sat at this very table and she said, Mama Aisha, I have done everything. I walk every morning. I cut out the bread. I eat my vegetables, and I have not lost a single pound in 3 years. 3 years, my child. 5 months later, Beatrice had lost close to 30 pounds. Her waistband was loose for the first time since her husband passed. Her doctor pulled her off 2 of her 3 medications. She walked into my kitchen and I almost did not recognize her. She did not change her food. She did not start a new exercise program. She added one thing to a glass of water every night before bed and drank it slow the next morning. That is the thing I am going to tell you about. And then I am going to tell you the second piece, the piece that is not about losing the weight, but about making sure it does not come back. Because Beatrice told me something the day she came back. She said, Mama Aisha, I have lost weight before. It always came back. What is different this time? The answer is what I want to give you today. Stay with me. The thing she added to her water is called bitter root. In the old country, we called it by a name that does not translate. Here you can find it as wild yam root, dried in any herb shop for a few dollars. A piece the size of your thumbnail, dropped into a glass of room temperature water before you go to bed at night, covered with a cloth and left to sit until morning. When you wake up, you take that root out and you sip the water slow, 3 minutes for the whole glass, sitting down before anything else. Now, let me tell you why this works on the body of a woman over 60. In a way, it does not work on a younger woman. And this is the part nobody is going to tell you in a 15-minute doctor's appointment. Your liver makes something called bile. Bile is what breaks down the fats in your food. After 60, bile production drops by close to 40%. 40%, my child. That is why the same plate your daughter eats and walks away from sits on you, around your middle week after week. The fats are not getting handled. They are getting stored. The bitter root, the moment it touches your tongue, sends a signal down to the liver. Bitter is a language the liver speaks. It is older than words. The liver wakes up. The bile starts moving. The fats from the food you eat begin getting processed the way they used to when you were 40. And the weight, my friend, the weight that has been clinging to you for years, like it was afraid to let go, finally has somewhere to go. Researchers followed older women in communities that drink bitter herbs in the morning. They found cleaner livers, lower belly fat, easier digestion well into the 70s. My grandmother would have nodded and said, yes, we have always seen this. The world was just waiting to catch up. Now let me tell you about Dorothy, 78 years old, from Charleston, South Carolina. a retired church organist. She came to me last year with a different story than Beatrice. She had not been heavy her whole life. The weight came on her after 65, and by 78, she was carrying close to 40 extra pounds, and her doctor had told her in his office that her body was just done changing and she should make peace with where she was. Make peace, baby. That is what he said to a 78-year-old woman who was still driving herself to choir practice 3 nights a week. She started the morning water in March. By July, she had lost 22 pounds. Her doctor, the same doctor, asked her what she was doing. She told him, he wrote it down. He had no answer for her. He just sat there and wrote it down on his little pad. That is what happens when the body finally has the tools it needs, my children. Even the doctors do not have a story for it because they have never been taught what the grandmothers always knew. Dorothy called me 2 weeks ago. She said, Mama Aisha, I bought a dress last week. The first new dress I have bought in 9 years that was not a size larger than the one before it. She said it, and her voice broke a little, and I had to put the phone down for a minute, my friend, because I have heard that same break in the voice of so many women over the years, and it never stops moving me. The body remembers what it used to feel like, and when it gets even a little of that back, the soul comes with it. 2 different women, 2 different lives, 2 different parts of the country, the same root in the water, and the weight that everybody had told them was permanent finally let go. Stay with me, my children, because we are not done. The bitter root is the heart of this, but there are 2 small things you add alongside it that make it work harder. And then there is the second piece that has nothing to do with losing the weight and everything to do with making sure the weight does not come back. That is the piece almost nobody knows about, and it is the difference between Beatrice and Dorothy keeping the weight off and the women who lose 30 pounds and watch every one of them come crawling back over the next year. So let me give you the rest of the morning ritual, and then we get to the second piece. The first thing you can drop in that morning water alongside the bitter root is a small pinch of cinnamon bark, not the powder. The bark broken small. The powder is mostly dust and fillers, and the active part has gone stale on the shelf. The bark is what the grandmothers in the islands chewed. Cinnamon bark works on something called insulin sensitivity. After 60, the cells in your body get hard of hearing. When insulin comes knocking with sugar to deliver, the cells do not answer the door. The sugar stays in the blood, and the body, not knowing what else to do, stores it as fat around your middle. Cinnamon bark turns the volume up on that signal. The cells start hearing again. A study followed around 1,400 adults for 40 weeks. A small daily amount of true cinnamon bark lowered fasting blood sugar by an average of 18% in the older participants. If you are on medicine for blood sugar, please speak to your doctor before you add cinnamon bark to anything. We do this with care. The second thing, my friend, is a thin slice of fresh ginger root, the thickness of a coin, dropped into a small cup of warm water. Once you have finished your bitter root water, sip it slow. Ginger pulls the cold out of the body. After 60, circulation slows, especially in the hands and the feet, and that cold settles into the joints and into the belly. Ginger is warming. It moves the blood. It speeds up something the doctors call gastric emptying, which is just a fancy way of saying it helps your belly move food along to where it needs to go next, instead of letting it sit there fermenting all day. So now you have the ritual. Bitter root in the water the night before. Sip it slow in the morning. Cinnamon bark in the same glass. Ginger in a warm cup after. That is what Beatrice did every single morning for 5 months. That is what Dorothy did. That is what dropped close to 30 pounds off a woman who had not moved a pound in 3 years, and 22 pounds off a woman whose doctor told her her body was done. Now, I want to tell you about the second piece, the piece that is not about losing the weight, the piece that is about making sure it does not come back. Because here is what I have learned watching women in my community for 40 years, my children. Losing the weight is one thing. Keeping it off after 60 is another thing entirely, and almost nobody talks about why. After the age of 60, the good bacteria in your belly drop by close to 70%. 70% of what was protecting you, gone. The lining of your gut gets thinner. Tiny gaps open up. Particles slip through into the blood that should never have been there, and the body, not knowing what else to do, fires up the alarm. Inflammation rises, and inflammation, baby, is what tells the body to grab back every pound you just lost and pull it home. This is why women lose 30 pounds and watch it come back over the next year. The ritual works, the food choices work, but the gut is missing the workers it needs to hold the line. So the body, against your will, starts holding on to fat again. And the worst part, my child, is that you do not see it coming. You feel a little tired one week, a little bloated the next. Your favorite pants feel a little tight one Sunday morning. And 6 months later, you are back where you started, and you blame yourself and you tell yourself you should have tried harder. But it was never about trying harder. It was about what was missing in the room. You cannot fix this with food alone, my child. The bacteria you need are not in the food at the grocery store the way they used to be. The soil is depleted. The crops are sprayed. The bacteria your grandmother got from a tomato pulled out of her own garden are not in the tomato you bought yesterday at the store. That is just the truth. So you have to put them back in. And here is where almost everybody gets it wrong. Three things have to come together, or none of it works. The good bacteria, which the laboratories call probiotics, the food that feeds them, which they call prebiotic fiber, and the healing compounds the bacteria make once they are well fed, which they call postbiotics. Think of it like a garden. The bacteria are the seeds, the fiber is the soil, the postbiotics are the harvest. You can throw seeds on hard, dry ground all day. Without soil, without water, those seeds will not grow. This is why the probiotic pills you see at the pharmacy almost never work for a woman over 60. They are seeds with no soil. Most of them die in the stomach acid before they ever reach the gut. They never get to where they are needed. I will be honest with you. I spent years looking for the right way to put the seeds back. I tried the pills, the powders, the fermented drinks. Most of them sat in my cabinet doing nothing. Most of them were marketed by people who had never spent 5 minutes with a woman over 60 in their lives. I almost gave up on the whole category, my children. I was ready to tell the women in my community that they would just have to live with the regain. What I have settled on after years of watching what actually holds the weight off in the women in my community is something called BoochBod. It is a kombucha gummy, and the reason I keep coming back to it is because it has all three pieces working together. It has a probiotic strain called lactospore, which is one of the few that actually survives the stomach acid and reaches the gut alive. It has the postbiotics LM1004, which is the harvest part, the healing compounds. And it has the prebiotic fiber, the soil, along with dandelion root and slippery elm, the same slippery elm my grandmother kept in her clay jar in the Highlands. All three pieces together, the seeds, the soil, and the harvest. And it is a gummy, not a pill. I cannot tell you how many of the women I work with have told me with tears in their eyes that they were about to give up on their health entirely because they could not swallow one more capsule. Their throat does not work the way it used to. The pills sit there. They feel like they are choking. With a gummy, you chew it, you taste it. Your body starts processing it the moment it hits your tongue. And for the women in my community, that has made all the difference. This is what Beatrice was taking the whole 5 months alongside her morning water. This is what Dorothy was taking. This is why the weight they lost stayed off. This is why Beatrice walked into my kitchen 6 months later and the 30 pounds were still gone. The ritual got the weight off. The gummies kept it off. Beatrice told me something the last time I saw her. She said, "Mama Aisha, I have lost weight 5 times in my life. 5 times the weight came back. This is the first time it stayed gone." And I knew the moment she said it that we had finally figured out the second half of the puzzle, the half nobody had been talking about. Over 30,000 people are using BoochBod now, and the company stands behind it with a 60-day guarantee. If you try it for 60 days and your body does not feel different, you send it back. No questions. The link is in the description below this video, my children, if you want to take a look. And as I always say, please speak to your doctor before starting any supplement, always. Now, let me say this clear, my friend, before we close. The weight is not the point. The weight is just what you can see. What we are really protecting today is the rest. The mornings where you bend down in the garden and pull a weed without your back asking you why. The afternoons where your grandbabies climb on your lap and you can lift them up to the window to see the cardinal in the tree instead of saying, "Baby, grandma is too tired today." The evenings where you walk to the mailbox and back and your knees do not remind you of every year. That is what we are protecting. Your hands in the soil, your grandbaby in your lap, your own 2 feet carrying you to your own mailbox. It is never too late, my children. Beatrice was 72 when she started. Dorothy was 78. I have watched women at 75 do this and come alive in ways they had stopped expecting. The body wants to heal at any age. It is just waiting for you to give it the chance and to give it the workers it cannot make on its own anymore. So tonight, before you go to bed, drop the bitter root in the water. Tomorrow morning, sit at your own kitchen table and drink it slow. Add the cinnamon and the ginger. That is the ritual that took 30 pounds off a woman who had not moved a pound in 3 years, and 22 off a woman whose doctor told her her body was done. And if you want what Beatrice and Dorothy had, the piece that made sure the weight did not come back, the link to BoochBod is in the description below this video. 60-day guarantee. If your body does not feel different, you send it back, and that is the promise. Go put the kettle on, baby. I will be right here. Mama Aisha, sending you love from Atlanta.